You're not human. That's hurtful. Are you that guy with the evil powers? I think everyone has dark urges. It's kind of my thing.
Welcome, adventurers, to this episode of the He Who Writes with Monsters podcast. I'm D. Allen.
And I'm Donnie B.
If you're new to the podcast, we are covering the He Who Fights with Monsters book series.
Yes, and last week we talked about chapter 20 and a little bit on 21, where we really looked at what essences are, what magic is, and how it kind of interacts with this world.
Yeah. Today, we're going to be talking a little more in depth and kind of continuing the conversation from last time about Jason's essences and his essence abilities and awakening stones and all that fun stuff. So without any further ado, let's get into it.
Yes, let's. So we already kind of mentioned Jason's essences a little bit. We know he has the dark, the blood, the sin, and the doom essence.
Yes.
Doom being the confluence essence of the other three. So let's get into the actual abilities that he gets from these essences. So he takes the blood essence first, which I really like because the blood essence is basically just a cube of what looks like blood.
Yeah.
These essences are very descriptive in what they look like.
Yes, and specifically when he takes that one, like they kind of describe it as like gross, like it just like melts into his hand and into his bloodstream, like ugh, that's how you get AIDS.
You lost me at AIDS.
As we have many, it's an epidemic.
Yes.
Dude,
Join the fight.
So when he takes the blood essence, without the awakening stone, he immediately unlocks the blood harvest ability, and that's kind of his life drain power, which I kind of like.
Yes.
When I visualize it, it's like I imagine. I don't know if you ever played like the original God of War. When he would do his life drain ability, you'd get little like red orbs of it.
No, I haven't played that game.
Oh, well, yeah,
It's been on my list for a long time.
Yeah, anytime they talk about his life drain ability, I always imagine that little Kratos like sucking the life drain, like specifically like the animation for it with Jason. And it's pretty basic ability. It does what it says on the tin. It's blood harvest, and it can only work on creatures or living things with blood at the moment.
It's specifically it works on dead things with blood.
Oh, he has two different abilities, one for living, one for dead?
Yes, so he has Blood Harvest, which is for dead things with blood, and then he'll get Feast of Blood in a minute here, which we'll cover as well, which is the same thing, but it only works on living things that are currently bleeding.
Okay,
and these two are going to be very useful for him in his power set. These two kind of interact with each other that way too, so he can heal during a fight and he can heal after a fight. Which is going to be crucial for an affliction specialist, especially affliction skirmisher as he becomes.
Right. So, okay, dude, this is kind of a weird thing, but when I was reading through, I felt like they didn't actually really describe an affliction specialist. They just kind of start saying like, "Oh, you're an affliction specialist." Did I miss something? Did they describe affliction specialist somewhere and I just didn't see it?
No, and that's one of those things with this series. So the affliction specialist category itself is incredibly fascinating to me. This is the first series I've read where it's like an actual thing.
Right.
And since reading the series, I've been trying to find like RPG video games that you can build an affliction specialist class or that have inherent affliction specialist class. Which I really can't. The best thing I found is For the King, where you can stack afflictions and different kinds of afflictions to a degree. But this is something we really don't get an explanation on until I think it's book 5 when he's in Rimmeros, during the monster surge, that we actually break down what an affliction specialist is, what an affliction skirmisher is. Um,
Mhm.
and even in these chapters specifically, when he uses his awakening stones, you'll get the powers, but it won't explain what those powers are,
Right.
until he uses them in combat much later. So it's kind of a cool way that Shirley did this, because we're sitting here not really getting an explanation on what an affliction specialist is, but kind of understanding the idea. And then we kind of learn about it as it goes, similar to how Jason learns about it this way. Um, so I think it's really cool. We don't know more than he does about this particular topic.
Got you. So, you mentioned something about video games, um, and like afflictions, and obviously, for me, my first thought would be like an Elder Scrolls game, because there is some crazy stuff you can do with their magic system. However, I'm not sure if you can do like affliction stacking, but I know you can do a lot of crazy stuff if you know what to do and you unlock the right stuff. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and that's been my biggest issue with most video games. Like you can unlock characters that you can deal poison and you can deal damage and you can deal different kinds of what would be considered afflictions. But as soon as you stack one of them, it discontinues the previous one. Similar to how Pokemon works, if something's paralyzed and then uh,
If you
you put
burn
poison
it,
on it, it cancels
yeah.
out the previous one. Yeah, yeah. So it doesn't stack like that, and that's really what I want to see out of a video game. I want to be able to play an affliction specialist. This is just
Ooh,
me ranting about video games now.
technically speaking, along the same lines as Pokemon, but the Shin Megami Tensei games, um, I think you can get a little closer to that kind of stacking because with their status effects, I think their status effects do stack. The only downside is I feel like if you built your team like that, you would probably get through the battles before your team synergy could even do its thing, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm gonna try it in D&D next time.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm sure you could do it
So if
there.
anybody out there has any affliction specialist D&D characters, let me know.
There.
Anyway, moving on. So during this whole process, there's a couple of things not power related that I wanted to bring up. Um, so when he's taking the blood essence, this is the first time that Farrah sees him just straight absorb an essence, and we know she was really interested in it originally. And we
Mhm.
actually see her take on a little bit of a Clive persona happening. She goes full clinical. Describes Jason as the subject and starts talking about how interesting it would be if she had more of him, more people that could do this, so she could get a study group going. And I think it's really cool the parallel that we see. She's basically just a tame version of Clive in this moment.
Yes. Okay. So I had a note very similar to this. I literally wrote down Farrah shows an odd clinical nature that we don't see later in the series. Like she's like talking about writing papers and doing all this stuff. I don't I don't see her doing any of that after like this moment in the series. Like she's not a Clive character, but she starts off almost seeming like she's gonna be a Clive character, all studious and stuff, but then she just doesn't do that.
Yeah, so I think that has a lot to do with Jason in particular.
Mm.
Because as they get back to Greenstone and they start training, and she's his aura trainer, you know, she sees the side of Jason that is completely vulnerable and is completely out of his element, and she makes that realization that this dude's been terrified of everything the entire time he's been here, and I think at that moment she switches from being a trainer and a Magic Society researcher to being a mentor and more than anything a friend. So I feel like she would have been more of a Clive without the insight into Jason that she had in that moment.
Okay, I fully
I
agree
think
with
that's why
everything
we
you
don't
said.
see that come through.
I fully agree with everything you said. However, I wasn't talking about specifically towards Jason. I just mean in general. Like at no point later in the series do we see her like pining to publish a paper or researching some crazy thing. But just like in this specific moment, she's like, ah, dude, I'm gonna write the craziest paper. I'm gonna get like all these like critical accolades and blah blah blah. And it's like she isn't like that as a character ever again.
Well, I think that has a lot to do with her storyline in general, because just after she starts training Jason, she goes off and dies. And then when she comes back, she's got other things on her mind than writing papers, And I don't think she, like Clive in this situation, if he came back to Earth, he would 100% be spending the entire time writing a documentary on another world. But I think the scholastic drive from her has vanished at that point, and
Gotcha.
she is full on survival mode after that. So I think it's just the type of person that she is. So when Clive is faced with a situation like she would be, his instinct is write a paper and learn about it. Her instinct is survive the situation.
Okay, and
I
that
think
makes
that's the
sense.
biggest difference. But yeah, I do think it's weird that we see this in her now and never again.
Right. Okay, and that's fair. I just it was just something that stood out though because I was just like that's just odd. Like she seems like a completely different character at the start of the series, and then you know pretty much just becomes a typical fighter character. Or not fighter, but what would you even call it in this
Mhm.
universe? She's not like she's a brawler, but
I think officially she's a frontline brawler, but
okay,
I don't know. She just becomes Farrah.
yeah, that's fair.
Uh,
Okay, so I guess we can start talking a little more now about like the more of his abilities.
yeah. I did want to go over one thing real quick.
Yeah.
Um, just right in the middle of chapter 21 that we didn't get into last time. Um, so after he takes the blood essence, he asks Rufus if he should take some awakening stones and then his
Right.
essences or more essences.
Right.
And Rufus explains that if you take your awakening stones before you get all your essences, then your powers won't synergize, and they won't be as focused as you would want them to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which got me into thinking, if you had all the money in the world, right? Obviously, this would be an incredibly expensive venture, but if you had a power set, a specific power set that you wanted, right? Not to the point of each ability being marked down, but like you want these essences, and from this essence, you want this health gain ability. From this essence, you want this aura power. If you map it out kind of like that, and then you absorb your essences and then your awakening stones like in order. So one essence, four awakening stones, one essence, four awakening stones. But you use the highest rarity of the specific awakening stone that you want, so that you're basically guaranteed a power type
Mm.
within that essence. So like we see the awakening stone that Jason takes later, that's known for giving aura powers, where he gets his hegemony aura power from.
Gotcha.
If you want a water essence with an aura power, could you cheat the system like that? Could you build a basic power set by doing that and basically guarantee yourself your own character sheet?
I feel like that is just how it works, though, isn't it?
I mean, kind of, right?
No,
Because we know that with Jason's affliction specialties, like all of his essence abilities will be geared more towards synergizing with what he already has.
right.
Um, you know, um, but it's mostly going to be random chance if you don't have a full set of essences yet. And
Okay. Okay. Okay.
I don't know,
Okay.
like if he wanted all health drain abilities, could he just take the blood essence and then all of his feast stones, and get five blood drain abilities?
Okay. So, all right. I am now with the conversation. At first, I didn't quite catch what you're saying. So yeah, I mean, I think a person could do this. However, I think it might be unwise because so say for example, in this scenario, he got the dark essence first, right? So if he would have taken
Hmm.
all 4 necessary stones to complete his 5 abilities. Those abilities would probably work well together amongst themselves. So if we went forward and did that, one ability at a time, one ability, 4 stones, one ability, 4 stones, I think you would have inconsistent synergies if you did it that way.
I think you would too, but if you already have a power set that works, like if we use Jason's full power set as a baseline, right? And so we know we want a combat heal ability. We know we want a damage ability. We know we want like a necrotic stacking spell ability.
Mm-hmm.
And we go out and we find, legendary awakening stones that are almost guaranteed to give those powers. Then we could dictate which essences they come from. You would end up with the same kind of power set with different abilities. They might not all be synergized together, but because of the forced nature of the stones that you're using, I feel like you would come up with a similar power set, just not synergized with each other, but forced synergy.
I mean, and that could go one of 2 ways. Either it would work really well and you would have a really powerful character, or it would work really badly and you'd have like just a goofy little like can't do nothing kind of character.
Yes.
And I think it might be fun to see both sides of that scenario happen, where one is just absolutely OP, the other one is just underwhelming, like in pure definition.
Yeah. I think that's something that we need a simulator for. We need a video game, an open world He Who Fights with Monsters video game, so we could try all this shit.
That would be cool. That would just be cool. That
would just be cool.
That would just be cool. Yeah. I mean, it would just be like an Elder Scrolls game, but like, no, it's just He Who Fights with Monsters and fun. Now, jumping ahead a little bit, just because I thought this was a fun fact, and we're gonna get into it anyway. Once he gets his Doom essence, he gets the ability Inexorable Doom.
Mm-hmm.
And as ever with this series, Shirtaloon has a very big vocabulary, so I'm always looking to see, like, all right, what is this dude talking about? What do these words mean? I have a pretty good vocabulary myself, but I don't know all things. So Inexorable came up, and I was like, all right, what does that even actually mean? It's a cool word, but what does it mean? And it's unable to be moved by entreaty or prayer. Basically, cannot be convinced to move. So essentially, inexorable doom. Like there's nothing you can do about the doom that is coming your way.
Yeah, unnegotiated. It's happening.
Yes, I like that, and I feel like that this is the case with just like basically everything he does in this series, because he's doing interesting and fun things with language that just tickles my brain, and I love it.
Yes. And it's perfectly named too, because this ability in particular, it takes all of the afflictions that he's gonna stack on whatever he casts it on, and periodically applies more of those. So if something is bleeding, then every set amount of time, it'll apply another bleeding condition, and so on and so forth. So this is perfect for him because there's nothing you can do about it. It's just going to keep building. As long as there's something to stack, it will stack.
Okay, so I guess maybe clarify.
And that's why. That's why.
Sorry, go ahead. I just meant to say, clarify to me then what the ability Inexorable Doom does, because it's a cool word, and cool, it's Doom and Inexorable, awesome. What does the ability actually do, though?
So the specific wording here of Inexorable Doom, it's a spell. The incantation, in case you're wondering, is your fate is to suffer. Periodically applies an additional instance of each stacking curse, disease, poison, or unholy affliction the target is suffering from. This is a curse effect. This effect cannot be cleansed while any other curse or any disease, poison, or unholy affliction is in effect.
Okay,
So
so it's just a
basically, what it
multiplier,
does
basically.
is it takes. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't tell us what the period for periodically is. So let's say, yeah, let's just for sake of argument call it 5 seconds. So like when Jason casts his new sin ability, punish, right? It adds necrotic damage and the sin affliction. If he were to then cast inexorable doom, then every 5 seconds another instance of necrotic damage would be inflicted and another instance of sin would be afflicted. And as long as sin is in place, you cannot cure inexorable doom because it's there. So every 5 seconds until all instances of sin are gone, it will add another sin affliction. And this will be crucial for, call in and with leech bite that stacks bleeding.
Yeah.
So every affliction that's on it will continue to be stacked. And if he casts it again, then it's like every 5 seconds, 2 of them will happen. Every 5 seconds, 3 of them will happen, depending on how many times he's cast this spell. And it cannot be removed until all of them are removed.
All right. So now, what I was wondering though is with this inexorable doom, based on what you just said, does that mean the feed me your sins spell, Feast of Absolution? Do you think that that one purges everything and thus negates inexorable doom?
I think it would, yeah. So Feast of Absolution she gets from the Feast spell here, or Feast Stone here. Cleanses all curses, diseases, poisons, and unholy afflictions. With the additional holy affliction if it's an ally. So, inexorable doom being a curse that stacks diseases, poisons, and curses would absolutely clear out. So if he uses that spell on a target that he's already afflicted, and it cleanses all of the afflictions that he put on it, that would include inexorable doom because it's a curse, and everything else had just been cleansed as well. Until he reaches bronze rank, in which it replaces it with holy damage. I think it's bronze rank. So
Oh,
at this
yeah,
point
yeah,
in
yeah.
time, yes. So yeah, the damage would still remain. So whoever it was wouldn't be healed. Their afflictions would just be removed. So it's his way of stopping afflictions.
Okay, okay, so that's fair. So yeah, I mean, then I guess he's really got to use that one with proper selection and care because you don't want to be fighting your enemy and then just cure them of all your stacked afflictions unless you're at a point that it's not going to matter, which we see him do plenty of times.
Yeah. Well, and this is a weird ability because at lower rank it's designed to be a stop this person from dying in this fight type of ability. So he can damage somebody until they're complicit, and then he can remove all of the damage he's causing them and keep them alive. As he ranks up, it becomes more of a combat spell, so it removes all of these afflictions and then replaces those afflictions with transcendent damage. So it turns
Right.
into a full kill spell, which is incredibly ironic because the higher rank he gets, the more damage it does, the more he's trying to keep people alive. So,
Right.
at these early ranks, like, he doesn't want to kill anybody, but it's going to happen anyway, so he doesn't really need to cleanse them. But later
Yeah.
on, when he does need to cleanse them, he doesn't have that ability. He just has to kill them. So it's kind of an ironic ability for him.
That is, and after he gets that holy damage ability, is he not able to heal people like he did in the past?
Not with that spell, no. Okay, so he can and he can't. So, not from his enemies. So he won't be able to heal his enemies that he's currently fighting because it automatically replaces it with transcendent damage. But he still uses it to cleanse allies. because all of his afflictions turn to holy afflictions, which this cleanse effect doesn't affect um,
Right.
towards enemies, but it does cleanse holy afflictions from allies. So when he uses this ability on, normal rank people and random people and on his team, it'll cleanse all of the unholy afflictions, and if they do get replaced with holy ones, it automatically will cleanse them too.
Hmm.
So it is a full heal spell for people on his side. He just can't keep anybody he's fighting alive.
That's fair. Okay. Okay. So last time we were talking, we were talking about which essences are lined up to which attribute. And one that I did we just kind of didn't really talk about, but I really like that dark is connected to the speed attribute.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, darkness is the only thing that's as fast as light. I mean, obviously, darkness is a concept on an actual physical thing. You know what I mean? Because the minute
Yeah.
that there's no light, it's instant dark. So the fact that dark is his speed, I just thought that was a funny little nod to physics, possibly.
Oh yeah. And it becomes his utility power too. So most of his utility abilities are from the dark essence.
That's true.
Um,
Yeah.
which is perfect because speed is a utility attribute. So I think on all levels it works.
Yeah. Okay. So for the punish ability on the sin essence, that's a recovery spell for him, right?
No, it's a special attack.
Hmm.
It's straight damage. So it inflicts necrotic damage in the sin affliction. So that's what he imbues his strikes with. So with his knife, he uses the special attack punish with his knife, which in the first couple books here is going to add poison because of the type of knife it is. It's also going to inflict them with necrotic damage and the sin affliction, which is the brand, not the brand, the sin.
Okay. So I guess then I'm confused about like okay, so the sin essence is attached to the recovery attribute. And I guess I understand that he has like recovery spells in other attributes, but I guess that makes me confused then. So if all of his sin spells are not his recovery spells being linked to recovery, what correlation do they have to the attribute?
Well, there's crossover here. So with just the abilities that we unlock here, um, punish is really his only attack spell. He gets Feast of Absolution from the Sin Essence, which is the one that cleanses, and every time he cleanses an affliction, he gains health, stamina, and mana. He
Gotcha.
has Sin Eater, which is just a special ability. This is the thing that prevents him from being poisoned and then gives him resistance when he is poisoned.
Hmm.
Even with the punish ability, I would argue that the affliction of sin is protection itself because his enemies suffer damage every time they attack him. And then
Right.
his aura power he'll get from sin as well, his hegemony that creates a buffer where anyone attacking within his aura is automatically punished for doing so. So it's more of a defensive type spells and abilities that he gets from this essence. But his two main ones, his Sin Eater and his Feast of Absolution, are from the recovery attribute, and those are the things that are actually causing recovery more often than not.
Okay, but he has recovery spells in the blood ability, in the blood essence. Obviously, like we discussed, the sin essence becomes like holy damage. That ability becomes holy damage. So I guess I don't know. For me, and this is where I guess I don't understand magic systems. Um, like in my mind it's like okay, like everything to do with the dark essence should be something with speed, right? Like, and it should directly correlate with speed. Everything with the power, should correlate to power, but it seems like they intermix between all the different attributes in a way, and I guess that confuses
the attributes are just what defines his base power set. They're basically the same as your intelligence modifier, your charisma modifier. They're just there for
Oh,
statistics. The I don't think the abilities themselves have anything to do with the attributes that they're attached to, and the essences themselves. I do believe that they're just randomly attached to your attributes when you absorb them. So we do see a little bit of crossover with um, what the ability he gets is, with conjunction to which attribute it's attuned to, but I don't think it's a defining or limiting factor.
okay. Yeah, so that's I guess that's what was confusing to me was it just seemed like it didn't quite correlate. I was like, well, okay, but he's got damage abilities in the recovery attribute. He's got healing abilities in the power attribute. Like it's just so confusing and I just, you know, that makes a lot more sense that it's not so much of a hardline guide that I thought it was. And this is like, but see, in my mind, it's like attribute, like it's like a baseline level thing. So in my mind, it's like those are categories of what these things are gonna do, I guess, in my mind.
Right. Well, and the magic system and the combat system are so complex that to break it down into just four types would be it'd be too simple. I don't think combat would really work that way, you know? It's like a good way to think about it is like in D&D, right? You have your base attributes. Let's talk about like charisma. You have charisma as a base skill, like a base stat. But that's broken down into intimidation and persuasion. If everything that you did was just based on your charisma, then somebody who's good at persuading would also be good at intimidating and deceiving, um,
Got you.
in the same amount. So like a rogue would just be a charismatic player, similar to how a bard would be, instead of rogues being more sneaky and bards being more persuasive. So
Got
it's
you.
if everything that's attuned to the recovery attribute was recovery, then everybody would be a healer. Everybody would have 5 healing abilities. If everything in the damage category was damage spells, then everybody would be a damage dealer. You would have one type of adventurer. You wouldn't have multiple
Oh.
classes of adventurers.
Oh. Okay. Okay. That definitely clears it up. You would end up basically like anybody ever's first Elder Scrolls character, where you're just a mishmash of nonsense that doesn't work together, and you just do things.
Yeah, yeah, basically. And so it would just be cookie cutter. That's the way I see it. Your attributes define how you regain mana, how strong you are, how resistant you are, but your actual abilities themselves determine the kind of adventurer you are and the kind of powers that you have. So someone like Neil, who's focused around healing, would be so ineffective if he only had 5 defense spells. There wouldn't be a such thing as a healer. Same
Okay,
thing with
that's
Humphrey. If he only had 5 damage abilities, then he wouldn't be as strong as he is.
okay. That makes a lot more sense. I've been really confused about that for a while, and I've listened to the series a few times. I'm still like, okay, but that doesn't make sense.
I do think there's a little bit of crossover. So if your recovery spells are mostly in your recovery attribute, then the more you use them, the higher your recovery will be overall. So that'll be your top peaking one. Um, and so I think a little bit of crossover is necessary, and a little bit of sticking to the attribute is necessary. It would just be so much, I want to say worse, for lack of a better term. It would be so much
Yeah,
worse in terms of actually reading the book and following the storyline.
100%. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Now, so I think he ends up with what, 5 or 6 abilities at this point? How many does he end up with, like right now? By the end of these chapters, how many does he end up with? So I think it was
He ends
four
up
feast
with a total
stones.
of 10 abilities.
Okay, so it's 4 abilities from the essences themselves. He has 4 feast stones.
Hmm.
That's 8. And then we got adventure, and then we got apocalypse.
Yeah. So he gets a total of half of his abilities awakened right
Oh wow, that's cool.
now.
Okay, dang, yeah. So he gets like 50% of the way. So the the adventure stone.
Yeah, and he mentions here that his power set feels incomplete. You know, like he can feel that there's holes in his power set after he's absorbing his stones and getting his abilities. You know, which is a cool thing to add because we get the explanation that your specific power sets have different feelings. So someone like Farrah, who's mostly damage spells, um, when she was absorbing her essences and awakening stones, I don't think she would have felt more or less of that incomplete feeling because all of her powers are strong individually, whereas Jason's powers all rely on each other. This is a big thing for the first 2 books. He just doesn't have an ability to add like a lot of necrotic damage. Punishes his only damage ability for a while, and he like feels that hole inside of him, and that's the entire essence of confluence, you know, kind of spelled out for us here because his abilities because his abilities rely on each other to function.
Right.
He's feeling incomplete, which
Oh
is
yeah.
really cool. I really like that.
Yeah, and I mean Farah specifically stated it exactly what you said, that like, I don't feel incomplete because we're chilling. I am strong as hell. Or maybe Rufus said it. Someone said it. Someone specifically said what you just said. Um
Someone said it, yeah.
yeah. And so it's funny because it actually, even though Jason is getting power, if he went about it the wrong way, would be just as bad as not having power, because it could, if he didn't have Farah, Gary, and Rufus to guide him through all of this, like if he just found essences and did that just to do it, I don't think it would have
Hmm.
lasted very long at all, because he wouldn't have had the time to gain any traction in his power set to do anything before a competent essence user would have just taken him out. And just because he's an
100%.
affliction user, you know?
Yeah. Oh, and I think his luck is the number one attribute for Jason. I think it's a hidden attribute, and his is maxed all the way. Like he's got diamond rank luck from day one.
Yeah. So now I think we've covered the feast stone abilities, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So at least in terms of the awakening stones that he takes in these chapters, we got 2 more to cover. The next one is the awakening stone of adventure. And this is the first like rare stone that he's gotten. So the feast stones were all like, what were they, uncommon or were they just common?
They were common.
They were just common. Yeah, okay. So it's just basic common stone. So this is his first rare stone. And I actually forgot the ability it gives him.
It's the Path of Shadows ability. This is the one that allows him to teleport using shadows. Um,
Oh
I've
yeah,
got
yeah, of
so
course.
much to cover on this.
Yes.
um,
He unfortunately did not, because he's in the middle of the desert, so he doesn't get to cover anything on this.
that's true. I think this is probably his most important ability thus far. This ability
Definitely.
specifically is used as a metaphor to really describe in more of a tangible way Jason's conflictions with being in this new world. As we know, he can't get the ability to work until he fully accepts that he is in a new world and that magic is real. It requires a lot more internal acceptance in order to activate the ability than just flowing some mana into it. He has to believe that the ability will work and then allow it to work.
Got
And
you.
so we see this struggle a lot. Like he, for the majority of book one, he doesn't form the ability to actually get this to work. Um, and it's a huge mental block for him. And I think this is a big metaphor, and it's one of his most useful combat abilities,
Yeah.
despite
Oh
being a
yeah.
utility power.
Yeah. I mean, it literally dictates like his entire battle strategy to just dip, 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 dip. You know,
Yeah.
and yeah, I actually forgot that here in book one he has trouble with it. Um, because he becomes so fluent with it that it's just like, it's like breathing for him to just flip through shadows.
It is. And here's a question for you, right? So he uses his cloak to initiate the power very frequently in the later books. It's like his signature. And we know that his cloak, as it grows over time, starts to take on more and more of a portal like appearance. Do we think that, because it's mentioned, by other people, especially as he ranks up,
Hmm.
that his cloak looks more and more like a portal to space?
Right.
Do we think this is like a manifestation of the cloak being his essence ability? Since he's basically using it as a portal throughout Silver Rank, it just takes on the appearance of a portal and looks more portal like. Do you think that's intentional by the cloak, like an unconscious change?
I mean, it could be. And I mean, it also, at least from the author, could be an allusion to, his astral space and all of that stuff, a little foreshadow to that. And like his just teleporting between the universes kind of, which I do think he will get the ability to do, to just flip between universes without a problem eventually.
Eventually, yeah. Once we get to the transcendent Jason. But I
Um,
mean, even before we get to the the astral gate and the astral throne, and books 11 and book 12, um, it's more and more portal like throughout the series.
mhm.
The more and more he uses his cloak as a portal, I feel like the more it takes on the appearance of a portal.
Sure, and I mean, you could also you could factor that as, the cloak, as with pretty much everything to do with Jason's power set, being heavily adaptable. So, if Jason is constantly using the cloak as a portal, the cloak, might just get familiar with it and decide like, yeah, I'm just a portal now.
Yeah, I think that would be cool.
However, though, with the fact that he has just a billion other portal powers, what would be the practical upshot of his cloak? Like is it just an extra portal, or is it really just symbolic of what he uses? What do you think?
I think it's just symbolism.
Mm.
It's the cloak itself taking on a new appearance and a new role to reflect the person that it's shrouding. So, he's always jumping around, he's always using teleports. And so the cloak is like a physical warning to other people that he's not really there anyway. And the moment you try, he's not gonna be there. Kind of just an ethereal embodiment of Jason's abilities.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the cloak on the whole really is kind of his signature thing. Well, everything's kind of his thing, but
Yeah.
but like, when he gets to Earth much later, he becomes the Starry Rider, the Midnight Rider, or whatever you want to call him.
Mhm.
And that cloak is synonymous with Jason, and I'm sure all the conspiracies on Earth are all about that cloak, and probably think that that cloak can do more than it can, which it can do some cool stuff, but it's like he's the one that's doing all the cool stuff, not the cloak.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And finally, we've got one more stone to cover, but this one in particular is a much bigger ordeal than the rest of them. just given its nature, because that is going to be the awakening stone of the apocalypse, which immediately, immediately they're like, hold on, you've got what?
Yeah. I think this is a cool interaction between the team themselves because Jason's like, I'm a little wary of it because I know what apocalypse means, and I don't know about this one. And Farrah's like, yeah, I've never seen one of those before. That's got to be weird. Rufus is a little cautious of it. He's like, use it, don't use it, kind of whatever you feel. And Gary is on the bench that he ripped out of the ground, just full force into it. He's like, yeah, that looks dope. Use it. Just go for it, dude. It's got to be good if you've never heard of it before.
Sorry, you mentioned that bench, and this is from a previous chapter, but we did not mention this when we talked about that chapter. Gary with the bench made me laugh like way harder than I think it should have. But it was just the
Yeah.
nonchalance of like ripping up a bench that is ostensibly bolted to the floor, like slamming it down, breaking a bunch of shit, and then just looking at it and going, and sitting down on it. Like that, if that doesn't describe Gary as a character, I don't know what does.
Rufus's words played in the back of your mind. No unnecessary damage. This means you two.
Yeah, for real. I love that, and Rufus doesn't even comment on it when he does it. Like, I think Rufus just gives him like a weird look, like, bro.
Yeah, just like, please stop destroying things, man.
But yeah, so but that also again kind of ties into Gary right in this moment. Farrah and Rufus are both, and even Jason a little bit, are a little hesitant of this thing, and Gary is like, "Do it, do it, do it, do it. You got to do it. You better not do it. I will beat your ass if you don't do it."
Yeah. Oh, 100%. He's like, that's going to be something amazing. Let's see it. Everybody else is just kind of like, I mean, it's an awakening stone, so why not?
Yeah, and he is like excited about it. But Farrah mentions like, "Oh, you should sell it. That thing's legendary rank, or it's legendary rarity. It's going to be worth a lot of money." And Gary just screams like, "Don't you dare!" Well, you're going to need every bit of power.
Yeah.
And it starts like a bit of an argument between the three of them. While Jason's just standing there, the three of them are arguing about whether or not Jason should do it.
Yeah. And then Jason just does it while they're arguing. He's like, all right, that's enough. And he just absorbs the stone, which is probably the best decision he could have ever made.
Yes. However, it did not seem, at least immediately in the moment, that it was going to be a good decision. But nothing that anyone else can do, because Jason did indeed just YOLO, and Gary just like loved that. It was just like, haha, yes.
Yeah.
And this actually takes us to chapter 23. Jason now has to summon the brand new sanguine horror that just unlocked by him taking in the apocalypse stone.
Yes. Yes, he does. And this moment right here, they're in one of the ritual chambers in the estate, hiding from Anissa, because she can't know what's happening here.
Yeah, that would not be good.
And while they're drawing out the circle and, getting it all set, they're explaining, Farrah specifically is explaining to Jason familiar powers and, the fact that he can only unlock this kind of ability because of the ritual book he had taken to understand ritual magic. And this whole conversation is probably the most video game, type reminderance that I've had thus far in the series. It is very much set up like you would see in a classic video game. He found the ritual book, and it was the only skill book he could use that gave him the ability to unlock the boss monster as a playable character. It's just very much, if you loot everything you're supposed to loot, you'll unlock this hidden secret that will then allow you to get this ability. You know, so it's like
Yeah.
if he hadn't looted anything in the room, this would have been a different ability. If he hadn't used the magic item to unlock the secret achievement, you know, he wouldn't have gotten Colin. And you know, even knowing that the stone itself was influenced directly by the World Phoenix in this moment, we believe, allegedly.
Right.
Um,
Allegedly. I think so.
it's one of those things that's set up very video game like. I think it has to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's a good point. And it's so funny though. Farrah is like super against the idea of Jason learning ritual magic through the skill book. Like she's real salty about it. Like because she's super like hardcore trained in ritual magic. So in her mind, she's like, excuse me, you don't know shit about ritual magic. Like I know the ritual magic.
Yeah.
You know the quick and dirty stuff, which of course prompts Gary to give an innuendo. He's like, all the things I like are quick and dirty,
Or slow and dirty.
or slow and dirty. Yes, sir. Uh, um, but regardless, for Jason's purposes, despite Ferris' feelings, what he learned in the skill book was indeed enough to get started on summoning whatever this familiar is. Because at the moment, they don't know that it's going to be the Sanguine Horror. It's a familiar power. Granted, I would feel that one of them would have been like, ah, bro, we just dealt with an apocalypse beast. You got that stone right after that fight. They should have called the boss unlock. They didn't because it's not until the ritual actually pops off that they're like, guys, uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the leeches start coming out of the ritual circle. Gary's like, "Hey, does that look familiar to anybody? Like, you guys are seeing this too, right?"
Before the end of this, I want to get into the ambient magic stuff and ritual circles. But once they pop off the ritual and it starts to fill with blood and the leeches start coming out, Gary, who was fully championing Jason to take this stone, is all of a sudden like, oh, maybe this was a bad idea. And Rufus
Yeah.
was like real
Yeah,
smug
straight
about
up.
it.
You're the one that wanted you to take it. This is on you, but it's really not, but it is kind of.
Kinda.
Yeah. Yeah, and this ritual is it costs extreme mana, extreme stamina, and extreme health. You know, so this is gonna bottom Jason out just in the summoning. So during this whole thing, it looks like he's just bleeding out on the floor and then dying while he's summoning this apocalypse beast that they just fought. You know, so to the outside, you know, Gary's like, yeah, maybe this was a bad idea. I think we just killed him. Rufus is like, he'll probably be fine, but yeah, you should have thought about that. Like, nobody really knows what's happening. They just know Jason's on the ground, and it looks like they're gonna have to fight again.
Right. And actually, so before he even passes out, though, we get a description of like what's happening to him. And it says that basically pinpoints of blood start to shoot out of him like a pincushion, you know, like he was just poked with a bunch of holes and blood just starts spraying in all directions, which calls to mind a fact of where that like kind of came from. There was this old Japanese samurai film from like the 50s or the 60s, and the shot that was supposed to happen is the actor was supposed to get sliced across the chest and leak blood out of his chest, but the prop malfunctioned and sprayed blood everywhere. And the director was like, that was honestly pretty cool. I'm going to leave that in. I forget the name of the movie, and if we remember to do it, I'll leave it in the description. That, in my mind, is kind of what's happening to Jason. He is just exploding with blood from every orifice, every pore, everything. Just a super cool and gross kind of situation to be described. And it's after this point that he passes out for, I believe, the 8th time.
Yeah, that's number 8 so far.
Yeah, in a day, basically. This is still the same day that he got here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyways, at that point is when he passes out, and the blood all sucks through the floor in back into the ritual circle, and leeches start to come out, and everybody's like, "Oh shit! It's the thing, it's the sanguine
Yeah.
horror. Oh no!" And they're like, we should probably move him," which I'm guessing was probably not a good idea at that moment. I wouldn't go near it.
No, and Farrah even said that moving him at this point would be more dangerous than letting it continue.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I couldn't even imagine what would happen if you interrupted a ritual summoning like that.
No idea. Oh. Speaking of the summoning, though, before we get into talking about familiars a little bit, so I know this is going to come up later, and let's get ahead of it a little bit. The chant. We need to determine between his 3 familiars which chant is most unnerving, if you will.
Okay, so I will start off at least with the chant that is used to summon Colin. Because I highlighted that in my notes because I was like, damn. So it goes as follows. Let this mortal blood beckon the all-devouring power of the final threshold. Answer the call and claim the offering. Heed my command and bring forth the avatar of life's annihilation. And that's a power metal lyric if I've ever heard one.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that is the moment. That is the moment, too. After hearing that chant, Farrah turns and goes, yeah, letting him use that stone was a great idea. Is it? He's summoning an apocalypse beast. It's gonna be a little heavy metal.
That is for sure. All right, so what are Shade and Gordon's summonings then? Because I didn't look ahead to get those.
We will get those when he gets there.
Hey.
Keep this in the back of your mind. We'll repeat it after Shade and then after Gordon, because he'll get Shade and Gordon at the same time, so we'll be able to
right. That's right.
We'll be able to go through those all at the same time.
That's like 2 books from now, brother.
We'll get there.
We'll get there.
But yeah, so that is the infamous Colin chant.
One thing that I thought was kind of funny though is Jason like he needs a lot of material to summon this thing. And what does he need a lot of? Blood quintessence. And where are they at? The freaking cannibal cult.
Yeah.
Guess what they got?
And they
more than you need of. All the blood.
Yes.
All the blood quintessence.
Well, and his luck comes back in this because they took all of the higher ranked quintessence, but all the iron rank stuff they just left. So he's got piles of iron rank blood quintessence, which is what he needs, ironically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was actually perfect.
And I mean, obviously, as the story goes on, we're going to see a lot more to do with Colin. So we'll save all of what Colin, even actually really just the naming of him. He hasn't even named him, hasn't even actually been introduced to him. However, I think this would be a good time to talk just about familiars as a whole as we wrap up today's episode.
Yes. We learn here they kind of leave town while he's unconscious, so we're not going to get any more in the estate. Mm-hmm. But in terms of familiars themselves, we learn a little bit more as Colin manifests and then enters Jason's bloodstream. Mm-hmm. There's a little concern about what's happening there. So we learn a little bit about summoned familiars, and we talked a little bit about bonded familiars a couple episodes ago. A summoned familiar is similar, but the summoner basically performs a ritual and summons the spirit of one, the soul of whatever they're summoning, into their realm to serve as a familiar and magically creates a body. And the biggest benefit to this type of familiar is the fact that it can be subsumed into the summoner's body in various ways. It can go into his shadow like Shade or into his aura like Gordon. For a blood apocalypse beast, obviously it's going to go into his blood. But when Colin is in his bloodstream, he actually provides healing. And the amount of healing that Jason receives is based on the amount of biomass that is subsumed into his blood at the time. So that's actually what's happening here. So Jason almost kills himself to summon it. I think what actually ends up happening is Jason's blood gets replaced with leeches. So all of his blood is Colin at this point.
Oh.
That's why it took so much out of him. But while Colin is in his blood, he's healing him back up. So immediately ranking up that essence ability as the summoning ends, which is really cool. But it's also going to be very crucial for Jason in the coming books.
Yeah. And I think Jason himself, after he wakes up, in the carriage, he even himself thinks about like how weird it is to feel it coursing through his veins. He's like, yo, this thing's like inside me. But he's like thrilled with the power of it. Like, yo, I can feel this is an intense power. But like, brother, leeches crawling inside of you. Ooh.
Right. Well, they're not like technically full leeches inside of him, it's just magic. They turn into magic when they go into him, but the feeling still remains, so you still feel like there's leeches crawling inside of you.
Well,
Which is a crazy feeling to have to get used to.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, he describes earlier on in this set of chapters that once Jason hit Iron Rank, his ability to feel his powers grew exponentially. So he actually has an understanding of what they are and he can genuinely feel them and get a grasp for them, because now that he's Iron Rank, these powers are extensions of him, not some separate thing from him. They're an extension of him. And now that he's an actual official essence user, he can feel and recognize that. So, in a very real way, he can feel the leeches in his blood, whether they're in leech form or not, because he can feel the power that is those leeches in his blood.
Oh, yeah. And that's crazy. But yes, we have got 10 essence abilities. We have got a familiar. We're on our way.
We are on our way. So for the last few minutes here, just a couple little notes that didn't really fit into the conversation, but they were in the chapter. So maybe we'll popcorn off each other just for this last bit and talk about some just stuff that we thought was fun in this set of chapters. So this was just a funny observation that I had, but before reaching iron rank, humans or really anyone does not have an aura sensibility, which makes me think of one of two things is happening on Earth. Either all psychics on Earth are essence users, or all psychics are frauds.
Or both. I think
Essence users
so.
And frauds.
Yeah. So I think what's happening, I mean, normal people can sense essences if they're powerful enough or directed enough. To an essence user, aura sense is more of a tangible thing than anything.
Mhm.
I feel like to a normal ranker, an aura sense would just be the equivalent of the vibe that you get from someone. Because, like, when you're
Sure.
talking to somebody, you get like, oh, I get a bad vibe off this guy, or, oh, I really like this guy's energy, I think that's how it would manifest. You don't really have control over that. You don't know really what that means. It's just kind of a feeling in the back of your head. For an essence user, it would be like, oh, I actually see this guy's energy. I can feel what's happening. And the magic inside of you is more attuned to the magic coming out of them, basically.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that's fair. I just thought it was funny though, because it was just like, it just means that human psychics are frauds, like they've always been. But I just thought it was funny because it's like, I'm sure Jason's world has psychics. Like, could you imagine how many psychics were out of a job the minute like magic went worldwide on Jason's Earth?
Or how many psychics were instantly upgraded to real psychics?
Oh, ayo. hold on. Is there any psychic power that we see in this series? Like any telepathy or anything?
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. I know that telekinesis is a really big thing. I mean, Jason's interface, his party chat ability is a form of telepathy, and similar powers exist. Um, but I would have to deep dive into all of the abilities that we know of and see if any of them would really count as psychic abilities.
Interesting, yeah. I just figured that, at least to some degree, aura sense may at least have something to do with telepathy in some form or another, or at least be tangentially related to potential telepathic like capabilities. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think a sufficiently trained aura power in general would be the equivalent to what we would have here on Earth as psychic ability, because you'd be able to read people, you can see their emotions, um,
Hmm.
and see kind of into who they are a little bit, core user, essence user, normal rank, what rank they are, how they're feeling when they're lying, stuff like that.
Right.
So, in to an untrained person, that would be considered telepathy,
Hmm.
that would be psychic ability if you didn't know. So it really depends on what you determine psychic ability and telepathy to actually be.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Well, either way, I'm still pretty sure human psychics are frauds. So.
You think about it, airplanes on Palamustus is magic.
New band name, by the way, Airplanes on Palamustus.
Hear me out. That's a perfect album name.
Oh, bro, it would be.
Band name Rufus. First album, Airplanes on Palamustus.
Rufus. I thought it was Farius.
I mean, yeah, but if we're using that to describe Fairy, Guerra, and Rufus as a team,
Mhm.
then we shouldn't be putting them in a band together because they've had a lot to go through, and they don't need music involved as well.
Hey man, music might make them feel better. You don't know.
I don't know.
We'll figure it out.
Yes, we will.
All right, brother. Well, it's been a good conversation today.
Yes, it has. We got to really take a look at Jason's power set, his abilities, what the stones did for him, what they didn't do for him, and all that. I really liked where we went with this conversation. Felt very deep and meaningful.
Yes, it was. It was deep, meaningful, fun. We explored a lot, and I really look forward to next week, brother. What are we doing next week?
Yeah, so next time we are finally getting out of the Vane Estate. We will be looking at, a little bit more of this Delta region, this desert that we have going on, and we'll get to our first village with people who are not cannibals. A nice little quarry village. We'll get to see how Jason interacts with normal folk and, how he decides to live his new life. So I'm excited for it.
I'm excited too. And I mean, I think it's fantastic. He must assume that just this entire world is cannibals. So it'll be nice for him to meet some people who aren't.
All right. So till next time, I've been D. Allen.
And I've been Donnie B. Make sure you check us out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, X, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes, sir. And remember, fight monsters.
But don't become one.
Catch you guys next time.